Hello again, I'm Doug Smith, and welcome to another edition of Portsmouth This Week, the voice of Portsmouth Town Hall. We've got two guests on today. Our first guest is Portsmouth Fire Department Chief Mike Cranson. Welcome back to the show, Mike. It's always a pleasure to have you down here.
Thank you, Doug. It's a pleasure to be here.
The topic today that we're going to be discussing is kind of like, it got to do with water safety. We recently had a tragic drowning here in Portsmouth, and I think what I'd be interested in hearing is, how did you respond, and how did this all play out from a emergency rescue kind of standpoint?
Right. So recently we had the drowning here in Portsmouth, and certainly our thoughts and prayers are with the family involved. But to get into how we respond to those types of calls from a fire department perspective.
Yeah, this might be a good example to talk through.
So what we do, it's actually a statewide response we have now. Because of the increase in water emergencies we have on a state level, and the fact that no one community has all of the marine assets that they may need, a few local fire departments got together and said, how can we make our response better, more coordinated, and work more closely with both the Department of Environmental Management and the United States Coast Guard. So we sat down as a group and we came up with this plan. The name of this response now is the Narragansett Bay Marine Task Force. So the whole goal of the task force is, when there's an emergency on the water, is to get as many assets to the scene as quickly as possible. I mean, it sounds like common sense, but that obviously is the goal. And not only to get them there quickly, but to make sure that the assets are appropriate for what the call is, and to make sure that the effort is coordinated. I mean, at least I have seen over my years in the fire service that if things are not coordinated and well managed, then
Sure.
things can really go badly quickly. So when we had this call last week, initially we got a call from a person on scene via 911 asking for help for a person in the water. We responded, the entire on-duty crew of our fire department here in Portsmouth responded, did a quick size-up of what was going on. They were able to relay that information to me, and we immediately notified the Narragansett Bay Marine Task Force. So how we do that is, over the radio we call, actually it's Cranson Fire Department, or what we call Metro Control, and we ask them to activate the Marine Task Force, and we tell them what the situation is. So depending on the type of call, we actually have what we call a run book. So you open this book up, and they have it at Cranston Fire, which is Metro Control. They open that book, and it says, okay, for this type of call, we're going to call the 4 to 6 closest communities that have boats, see if they're available to respond, and get them on the way right away. We had some unique challenges in this case because access in and out of the cove is dependent on the tide. So we had to sort of meet that challenge and say, you know, we need it specific for boats that can either fit into very shallow water to get in there, or boats that are able to be trailered to the scene and then launched. So Metro Control did that, and we also notify Coast Guard at Castle Hill and the Department of Environmental Management and our local police department.
Okay, were you doing this yourself from a command post somewhere?
So what I do from the command post is I arrive on scene, I say car 1 is on scene, and I establish command. And I call Metro Control on our 800 megahertz radio. We have the Narragansett Bay Marine Task Force has a designated channel just for marine incidents. So I call Metro Control and I say, I want you to activate the task force. This is what I have, and these are the particular kind of assets that I need to respond. And then I ask them, please let me know, who's coming. I ask them to also notify Coast Guard, Castle Hill, and the Department of Environmental Management and our local PD. The police department was on scene actually before I was. They arrived along with the fire department, the initial crew that responded. once we realize that this is going to be a prolonged operation and require some specialized services, like we needed a dive team, and that happens from time to time where we either need dive teams or we may need boats that are capable of putting out fires or what have you. Every situation sort of requires different specialties, but in the recent case we need a dive team. So we have to figure out a way to coordinate bringing divers to the scene and having platforms available to them to dive from, meaning boats. Because some departments may have divers but not boats. Many departments have boats and not divers. So what we did is we actually set up a staging area. We put one firefighter in charge of staging. We set up an operational area where we actually run the dive operation from, and we have one firefighter in charge of that. And his designation is operations. I am in command, and at the command post where I am, I also have representatives from other agencies so that we can continue to operate in a coordinated fashion. So we had a member of the Coast Guard at the command post, we had a member of DEM at the command post, we had a member of the Portsmouth Police Department at the command post, and then over the course of time, we ended up with a total of 14 to 16 different organizations in there.
Wow.
For that operation on the initial night that the accident occurred. So we had state police, we had several different people in there. But the whole idea of designating an operations sector and a staging sector is to try and, it's really to try and manage such a complex organization in a way so that nobody becomes overwhelmed. And I think it works very well. I mean, in the fire service, at least, we have a term called the span of control. And what that means is it's the amount of people that one person can really effectively supervise. So and that may change depending on what you're doing. You know, if you're doing a shoreline search of a beach, it's not really a safety issue for the responders. So
Right.
maybe one person can supervise more than 1 to 3 people or 1 to 5 people. But as you're putting divers in the water and underwater, it becomes a little bit more of a safety issue.
Yeah.
So you need to really manage the amount of supervisors you have versus the amount of people that are going in the water.
You know, as I recall, this incident started in the late afternoon, so you're also facing darkness. And I don't know, you know, in a murky place like the Cove, it's probably even harder to dive in after it's dark. I mean, you know, because your light's reflecting on all that silt and stuff.
Right. So daylight was a big issue that we were very aware of, and we were. The initial call came in at about 17:40 or 5:40 p.m. Once we were able to get divers on scene, we were really racing against the daylight. We actually ended up getting Cranson police dive team that came in, and they were willing to dive at night. But at the same time, we also had the state police coming in, and their very sophisticated equipment was required, and we can't do both at that point. We can't have divers in the water and that equipment being used. So
Yeah, you talking about sonar or something like that?
yeah, the state police have some very sophisticated equipment, and they were very helpful in showing up and being able to get that equipment in the water, and it was a real pleasure to work very closely with them.
What kind of equipment do we have in town, in the fire department and police department, to respond to these things? And what do we need?
In the police department, we have the harbor master, who is, you know, basically the local authority on the water, and has a very good knowledge of the local waters and the terrain, I guess, or topography of the surrounding area. So we rely heavily on the police department for those kinds of questions that we may have. In the particular case last week, the harbor master was instrumental in helping us not only to perform the initial searches, but also we had a lot of good Samaritans coming in to try and help us in their personal watercraft. which was very much appreciated, but at the same time, you know, we want to make sure that we don't have anyone else get into trouble. So he was very instrumental in sort of keeping everybody safe during that operation. In the fire department, we actually have 3 boats. We have a 27-foot Maycraft that we keep in the water. During the summer months, we actually keep it at Carnegie Marina, and during the winter months, we keep that boat at East Passage Yachting Center. We also have a 10-foot inflatable. It's an Achilles, like a Zodiac style boat, and we actually deployed that night. We're able to actually physically pick that boat up, put it in the back of our pickup truck, and get it. You know, and that was sort of the reason behind getting that boat. Is it's very, very quick to deploy. And we also have a 19-foot Boston Whaler that is on a trailer, and we keep that in the station. Primarily, we use that boat to cover the Sakonnet River. Like I stated, the bigger boat we keep over on the west side. So if we have something going on the east side in the river, it's sometimes quicker to launch our whaler.
Yeah. You might want to, you know, give some kudos to some of the other folks that came and supported you. I think you talked about the East Greenwich.
Yeah, so East Greenwich was they sent a dive team both Friday and Saturday to help us out. There are several communities, I don't want to leave anybody out, but it was, you know, the Tiverton Fire Department, the Middletown Fire Department, the Newport Fire Department, everybody on Aquidneck Island that came to support this incident that we had. Obviously, DEM was there and very helpful, the Rhode Island State Police, Cranston Police, Warwick Fire, Westport Fire, Fall River Fire, Tiverton Fire, I think I mentioned.
And in any event like this, you would be helping them out as well, right? If
right.
They have a problem like that.
Part of this Narragansett Bay Marine Task Force is that, you know, when there's an event going on somewhere else, we respond there to help them too. Yeah.
Chief, we're already getting close to being out of time, but I just wonder if you could mention, what about swimming in Portsmouth? Where is the safest place to swim in Portsmouth, would you say?
Sandy Point Beach.
Because there are lifeguards there, and
there's lifeguards at the beach, and I would recommend, even if you know how to swim, number one, you don't swim alone, and number two, you swim at a guarded beach and in front of the lifeguards.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of places, not just in Portsmouth, but I would say statewide, that, you know, the water may look safe or like a relatively harmless place to go in, but you don't really know what happens when the tide changes, or or what the topography is of the land under the water.
Yeah, the current's an issue over there in the cove for sure. Both coming and going. So basically, Sandy Point Beach. You know, I guess the other thing is, if you don't know how to swim and you're in the water, you should probably have some kind of Coast Guard approved life jacket on.
Right. Yeah, I would agree with that statement. If you can't swim, wear a life jacket if you're going to go in the water.
Yeah.
You know, don't ever swim alone, and you know, take some swimming lessons.
Yeah.
You know, there's
absolutely
there's swimming lessons
everywhere.
available everywhere, even for not just for children but for adults as well.
Yeah. A final question here is CPR. I mean, and if somebody's in the water briefly and they get pulled out, CPR could save their life, and it's fairly simple now. How can people learn more about CPR? How can people get trained in CPR?
Well, CPR absolutely will make a difference, and it's a skill that pretty much anybody can learn and perform and save somebody's life. If anyone wants to learn more about CPR, they can certainly call the Portsmouth Fire Department at 683-1200. We do have a few firefighters that are certified to teach CPR. One of them led the drive that was able to get Portsmouth designated as a heart-safe community. So we do give those classes. You can also go to the American Heart Association website and the American Red Cross website.
Okay, Chief, thanks very much for coming in. Really appreciate it. Welcome back. Doug Smith here at Portsmouth This Week. Our second guest today is Cindy Kiilavey, the director of the Portsmouth Community Theater. Welcome to the show.
Delighted to be here, and it's Kiilavey. Say it with a bit of a brogue, my
dear. The Irish, okay.
Long A.
Apologize to Jim for you.
That's okay, Fred.
Okay. Last week, you folks did a very successful, as I understand, production of the Arsenic and Old Lace,
Yes, indeed.
for which I've apologized for not making. But
It's okay. There were lots of other people there.
yeah, that's great. How did it go? I mean, how
It
do you
went
think
very well.
Got pretty
Very
good
well.
reviews. Did you ever get Jim McGaw or any of those guys down there?
No, we don't really. I mean, these are community theater people, and
yeah.
a bad review can really
Well,
put
no,
you in
no.
a deep depression. But
Well, yeah, you wouldn't get a bad review, I'm sure, because those folks they're so great. They get so much into this thing. It's
yes, they do. It was
really
a
amazing
terrific
to see.
show.
I just wondered, could you give us a little background about the community theater, when it was formed, what it's been doing, that kind of
Sure,
stuff?
sure. Must have been back in late 1995. I was on the Arts for Life committee, and my children were young and involved in the Newport Children's Theater. Another mother, Rebecca Vickers, who also had children in the Newport Children's Theater, was concerned that there was really nothing going on as far as theater here in Portsmouth. So she contacted me. I contacted Priscilla Wimpris, who was on the Arts for Life committee with me, and I knew she had a background in theater. I have a background in theater on the stage. Hers was more off the stage background. And the three of us got together and we founded the Portsmouth Community Theater. The first production was held in 1997. It was Lovers and Other Strangers, and it was performed at the Common Fence Hall. Since that time, we've done musicals, we've done comedies. A couple of years ago in the summer, we did Carousel with a wonderful cast. We've also gotten involved in history. A few years ago, we were approached by Tiverton Four Corners to come up with a history walk. They gave us the material, we wrote the script, came up with the costumes and the actors, and it was very successful. Gloria and Richard Smith, who are also on the board, were on the board of the Portsmouth Historical Society, and for one of their harvest days, we provided some actors at the Portsmouth facility, the Historical Society building, who interacted with the people came through that
Yeah,
day.
I have to say that was great. I love that. It was just so cool.
This was not the walk behind the Brown House. This was right there at the Historical
Yeah.
Society, where we had someone in the old schoolhouse.
Exactly.
We had someone, Ron Marsh upstairs was a minister who used to come in from Newport on Sundays. We had somebody in the room they have there for the lady that wrote the Battle Hymn of the Republic, whose
Yeah,
name has
Julia
gone
Ward
out of my
Howe.
head. Yes, we had someone portraying Julia
Yep,
Ward Howe,
yeah.
and we had someone portraying Mrs. Durfee, who was the Queen of the Glen back in the Golden Age. You couldn't come out to Portsmouth and be inspired by nature without stopping at the Durfee House for Johnny Cakes.
That's right, yeah. I remember that. I went
Yeah.
to that. I thought it was absolutely
Yes,
great.
yes.
And the thing is, we're in Portsmouth, so we got such a great history.
Right.
Plus you guys who can reenact this stuff. It's
Yes.
just, it's really great.
In fact, during the 375th, we wrote a play, Ghostly Witness, based on the untimely death of Rebecca Cornell.
Yeah, I remember that well.
Yes.
That was a lot of fun. You personally bring a wealth of experience to this endeavor. Can you discuss a little bit about your own background? How did you get into this, and where
Well,
were you on
in
the
second
stage?
grade, I was an orange. You want to hear my first line? So you called me sour, did you, Paul? My brother's lemon and grapefruit may be sour, but I'm not.
Okay.
Yes,
And you-
that was-
How old were you then?
I was second grade, so I was about
Second
8
grade.
years old. And then I really wasn't very involved in theater because, believe it or not, I was really very shy back then.
Nah,
so
I can't
all
believe
through
that.
high school, wasn't in anything. It wasn't until after I was in high school. I was working in an insurance company. They had a group, a glee club, and then somebody named John Sybin showed up one day and said they were going to do the musical My Fair Lady. Would there be any interest? And as it turned out, I became Eliza Doolittle.
Wow.
Across the street, there was the cathedral. Behind that, Asylum Avenue, there was the Hartford Conservatory. And I started taking classes there in musical theater, dance, drama, eurythmics, everything to do with theater, and got more and more involved in various groups around the area. And then in 1973, some people from the Lyric Theater Company showed up at the Hartford Conservatory auditioning for summer stock to take place in Newport, Rhode Island. Where the heck is Rhode Island?
Right.
I auditioned and I was cast as the female comic lead. Came down here to Newport in 1973, was in a Mademoiselle Modiste, a 1912 Victor Herbert musical, at the Casino Theater. and wound up marrying the guy that played my husband in the show the next year, 74, and moved to Portsmouth and got involved in theater here.
Oh, that's great.
So mostly on stage.
Yeah,
But
but I know you're a director, and I mean that and with all due respect, because you really do have a tight handle on what's going on, which I think you have to do.
yeah, director, producer.
Yeah, and you do a great job with that, I think. It just
Thank
keeps
you.
everybody in line and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, but you have to have the people with the other skills. Like especially, I was so relieved with this Arsenic and Old Lace because Danny Rodericks, who we've known for a couple of years,
Yeah.
was directing it. So all I had to do was produce it. And then Andrew Kelly, I asked him to do a lot of the publicity work, and other board members stepped forward. And it's really a team effort putting on a show.
Yeah. Where do you guys hold your productions mostly?
Mostly at the Quidnick Island Christian Academy or the old Penfield School or whatever it was before
Yeah,
then.
Okay, right.
We thought about using the schools, but timing is awkward. There's additional fees that have to be paid,
Yeah.
and we're happy at the Christian
I
Academy.
just wonder if anybody's thought about maybe doing something up in the upstairs of the Historical Society in that church area.
It's not handicap accessible.
Well, does it have to be?
Well, we like to have all people involved in
Yeah.
our shows, and we've had a
Yes,
young man in
as
a
a matter of
wheelchair,
fact,
Neil.
yes. Neil, I know for
and
sure.
that would exclude him.
Yeah. Well, anyway, we'll work on that. I'm on the board now.
I've heard that.
So we'll see what we can do. Are all your players from local people, or do they come from elsewhere?
Portsmouth, Tiverton, Bristol. Although for Arsenic and Old Lace, there are a couple of the young gentlemen that were in the show that came up from up around Boston. And one of them had an hour-and-a-half commute one way.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, how do they find out about this? I mean,
I guess they were friends of Danny.
Okay.
I think they attend Roger Williams
yeah,
University.
Danny's quite a
and he knew them
talented
through.
guy. Is
Yes, he
What
is.
I can say, yeah.
Yes.
And I noticed he's leaving. Is he leaving for good, or is he leaving? I saw something on Facebook or something about.
He hasn't told me he's
Oh,
leaving,
well,
so therefore he's not
Sorry.
leaving.
Okay, I gotcha. Can you name a few of the folks from Portsmouth that people might know?
Well, Portsmouth chiropractor Ron Marsh
Okay.
is our treasurer. Trish Culver, who works in Middletown but lives in Portsmouth. Denise Betts, who's a post person over in Bristol but lives in Portsmouth. Andrew Kelly. Danny's from Portsmouth. Tanya lives in Bristol, but she was front of house for Arsenic and Old Lace, so she was with us every night. Richard and Gloria Schmidt, who live in Portsmouth.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And your husband?
Yes,
Jim.
indeed. He's a support, but
That's
he's
right.
not actively involved in the board.
Okay. He did a great job, by the way, in that Ghostly Witness. The show was really narrated by him, and
Right.
he did such a great job.
Something like that, you really need to have somebody that kind of explains, well, you know,
You do.
back and then when you said there was a black dog, what you meant
What did
was...
that mean? Yeah, exactly. You know, putting one of these things together, and I saw that briefly during this Ghostly Witness thing, that I was privileged to take part in a little bit. It takes a lot of time and effort. What makes people want to do this?
Well, because it's fun. It's like anything, a group working together, you form strong bonds, and if it's not fun, you're not going to do it. And then just to be able to bring something to life like that and tell the story to people who may not have even heard the story, whether it's a play or a historical event,
Yeah.
it's kind of a special thing to do.
Especially with the classics like Arsenic and Old Lace and
Yes.
things like that.
Yeah.
It's nice to do that.
In fact, there were some teenagers that came to the show, and I know Tanya was a little concerned. I guess it was a cousin of hers that she wouldn't get the jokes or whatever. Well, I understand after the show, the mother was complaining. The girl kept going, "Oh, bully," because that's what Ron Marsh's character kept saying.
Yeah. Well, that's better than some alternatives.
Yes,
I could think of,
indeed.
yeah. You have any new plays coming up, or in the can, or in the plans?
Well, we're working on another historical production that we'll probably do at the Valley Inn in October. Gloria has found some information about vampires in Rhode Island back in the colonial days. So I'm developing a play
Wow.
about that. It's going to have Bite.
Were they in Portsmouth exactly?
It was Rhode Island.
Rhode Island, okay.
So we're thinking maybe history, mysteries, vampires in Rhode Island, question mark.
Okay, because I would think vampires would be more up in Providence than down
Oh, yeah, sure.
You know, if people are interested in one joining your group of players, if they'd like to get into this, what should they do? Who can they contact?
Well, they can contact me. My phone number is 847-5148, or any production. We had membership forms at the last show every night. What I've found over the past years is people will get involved in a show, but they won't join. They'll just be in that show.
Yeah.
Well, because they have other things
But
going on
a
in
lot
their
of times
lives.
you'd like to try it because you never did it before.
Yeah.
And then after you tried it, you say, okay, I tried it. I mean,
Yep.
but I'm just, you know.
Yeah. Well, you know, people want to be in the show, but they don't want to do all the other work that has to go
Yeah,
around
yeah.
and putting on that
No,
show.
believe me, I can't remember what it was. I guess it might have been Ghostly Witness, but I remember moving all the furniture and stuff
Yes.
around. That got
Because
that got to
those
be
chairs don't go in place by
That's
themselves.
right. There's a little bit of heavy lifting that you're required to do in this
Yeah,
thing.
and we were fortunate that we had a lot of young people in Arsenic Old Lace because we had used the stage extension, and we do fortunately have some storage in the school. So just helping get everything broken
Yeah.
down and put away, because we leave the school in better shape than we found it.
Yeah.
And that's pretty hard because it's in
The
pretty
place
good
is
shape.
in pretty bad shape right now.
No, it's in good shape.
Well,
They take very good care of
Yeah,
it.
but the infrastructure is tough
Yeah,
over there.
true, true.
And that's something I think the town is going to be thinking about and trying
Yeah.
to figure out what to do. What about kids? Do you guys get involved with the schools at all, or?
Well, we were approached by the middle school to develop a program on Ann Hutchinson and Roger Williams.
Oh yeah.
There again, Gloria helped me with the research, even though she was down in Texas during the winter. And we came up with a program that was entertaining and educational and well received.
Now, was that taped or videoed or anything?
No.
Oh, geez, because I'd like to see that.
Ah, well, we're almost out of time. So let's start winding up here.
Okay. How can regular people who don't necessarily want to be a player support you?
Come to the shows.
Okay.
We have a Facebook page, Portsmouth Community Theater. You can like our Facebook page.
Do you also have a website or no?
We do. It's it's a little out of date, but it does have information on the last production.
And it's got contact information and stuff.
I think so, yes. And
As I
that's
recall, yeah.
www.aboutpct.org.
Okay. Yeah, and I'd recommend everybody in Portsmouth, or on the island for that matter, to come see one of these productions. See your neighbors. Trish Culver's right down the street from me.
Right.
And you can see your neighbors doing their thing up there. It's really
In a whole new light.
Yeah, in a whole new
You'll
light.
never drink wine at her house again.
Yeah. Well, listen, Cindy, thanks so much for coming in. I'd like to offer this show, when you guys have another production coming up, let us know. We'll help publicize it.
Excellent. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Doug Smith signing off. See you next time.